Have you ever felt the ground shift beneath your feet? That subtle tremor that warns you something massive is about to break? That's the feeling you should have right now. Because the global economy isn't heading toward a correction. It's not facing a recession. It's barreling toward a collapse that will make 1929 look like a practice run. Welcome to the Wealth Forum, where we decode the patterns that determine your financial future. What I'm about to show you isn't speculation. It's not doom mongering. It's pattern recognition based on three undeniable facts. We have more debt than any civilization in history. Every asset class is simultaneously inflated, and the tools that saved us in 2008 no longer work. The 2026 crash is coming, and almost nobody is ready for it. But here's the real question. Why? Why can't people see what's right in front of them? Why are we repeating the exact same mistakes that destroyed the world in 1929, only this time on a scale 10 times larger? Stick with me for the next 8 minutes, because what you're about to learn could be the difference between surviving the next crisis and losing everything. To understand why 2026 will be worse, we need to go back to where it all started. October 1929. The 1920s were intoxicating. New technologies, radio, automobiles, electricity, were changing the world. The stock market soared year after year. Ordinary people borrowed money. They didn't have to buy stocks they didn't understand. Convinced prices would only go up. It felt like the party would never end. But the entire boom was built on three things: massive debt, reckless speculation, and blind overconfidence. When the bubble finally popped on Black Thursday, October 24th, 1929, the system imploded. Banks failed by the thousands. Fortunes vanished overnight. Unemployment hit 25%. The world economy contracted by 15%. What followed was a decade of suffering we now call the Great Depression. Here's the key lesson from 1929. When a financial system is built on excessive debt and irrational optimism, the fall is always harder and faster than anyone predicts. Now look around today. Does any of this sound familiar? We're living in an era of unprecedented technological advancement. AI, electric vehicles, space exploration. The stock market, despite volatility, has reached heights never seen before. And debt? We've taken the concept of debt to a level that would have been unimaginable in the 1920s. But there are three critical differences between 1929 and 2026, and every single one of them makes the coming crash exponentially more dangerous. In 1929, debt was mostly contained within nations. Banks failed in America, but the financial system itself was fragmented. Today, we have something completely different: a globally interconnected financial web, where every institution, every currency, every economy is linked. Government debt has exploded past $300 trillion globally. Corporate debt sits at record levels. Personal debt, mortgages, credit cards, student loans, auto loans, has ballooned beyond anything the 1920s generation could comprehend. This isn't one country's problem anymore. It's a global house of cards. If one major economy stumbles, China's property sector, Europe's energy crisis, America's debt ceiling, the contagion spreads instantly across borders. In 1929, a bank run in New York took weeks to impact Europe. Today, a credit crisis in Beijing can freeze London's markets in hours. This interconnectedness means when the crash comes, there's nowhere to hide, no safe corner of the global economy, just a synchronized collapse. In 1929, the primary bubble was stocks. Today, everything is in a bubble simultaneously. Stocks are at valuations that only make sense if you assume infinite growth. Real estate prices in major cities have detached completely from local incomes. Cryptocurrencies exploded to trillion-dollar valuations based on speculation, not utility. Even collectibles, art, trading cards, NFTs, saw their values skyrocket. What caused this? Over a decade of near-zero interest rates and unprecedented money printing by central banks worldwide. This flood of cheap money inflated the price of almost every asset you can name. In 1929, when stocks crashed, you could still own land, gold, or government bonds that held value. In 2026, when the crash comes, It won't be contained to one asset class. It will be a simultaneous implosion across everything. Imagine your stock portfolio, your home's value, your crypto holdings, and your retirement account all getting crushed at the same time. That wasn't possible in 1929. Today, it's the most likely scenario, and it means the average person has nowhere to run when the panic starts. In 1929, news traveled slowly. Telegraph speed, newspaper speed. When banks started failing, people lined up on street corners because they heard rumors from neighbors. Panic was localized and physical. Today, we live in an age of instant information and algorithmic trading. A market crash can be triggered by a single tweet, a mistimed algorithm, or a piece of breaking news that goes viral. Billions of dollars can evaporate in seconds before most people even realize what's happening. And panic spreads at digital velocity, through social media, through 24/7 news cycles, through millions of people watching their portfolios collapse in real time on their phones. The bank runs of the 1930s saw people lining up on streets. The bank runs of 2026 will be digital. Millions trying to withdraw money simultaneously, freezing the entire system instantly. No lines, no warning, just a digital stampede that crashes servers and locks accounts. The psychological trauma of watching your life savings vanish in real time on a screen is something the generation of 1929 never had to face. We will. So, with all these warning signs flashing red, why is nobody prepared? Because of a dangerous psychological trap called normalcy bias. We've had scares before. The dot-com crash in 2000, the 2008 financial crisis. But each time, the system was saved. Central banks stepped in, slashed interest rates to zero, printed trillions of dollars, and propped everything back up. We've been conditioned to believe that someone will always be there to save the day. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the government, somebody. This creates a false sense of security. People keep pouring money into inflated markets, taking on more debt, assuming the party will continue forever. Because it always has, until it doesn't. But here's the terrifying reality. The tools that saved us before don't work anymore. Interest rates are already at historic lows. Central banks have nothing left to cut, and printing more money now just fuels inflation, making the problem worse instead of better. They've fired all their ammunition. The bazooka is empty. In 2008, global debt was $170 trillion. Today, it's over $300 trillion. That means the problem has nearly doubled, while the solutions have been exhausted. The scale of what's coming is beyond what any bailout can handle. And there's another issue nobody talks about: political paralysis. In the 1930s, governments could act decisively. Today, political gridlock, populism, and division mean coordinated global response is almost impossible. When the crisis hits, nations will turn inward, not outward. Cooperation will collapse exactly when it's needed most. This is why nobody is ready. We're facing a crisis we have no solution for, trusting institutions that have no ammunition left. In a political environment that can't coordinate a response, the confidence that saved us before has become the complacency that will destroy us. When the 2026 crash comes, and it will come, here's what the cascade will look like. It starts with a trigger. Maybe it's a major bank failure. Maybe it's a sovereign debt default. Maybe it's a tech bubble finally popping. The specific cause doesn't matter. What matters is that the system is so over-leveraged, so interconnected, that any major shock becomes systemic immediately. In the first 48 hours, stock markets will plunge 30 to 40% globally. Not a correction, a collapse. Circuit breakers will trip. Trading will be halted repeatedly. But it won't stop the panic. Within a week, the credit markets freeze. Banks stop lending to each other because nobody knows who's solvent. Businesses can't make payroll. Supply chains seize. Grocery stores can't restock because the credit system that moves goods has broken down. Within 2 weeks, unemployment starts spiking. Not slowly like in 2008, rapidly. Companies laying off thousands per day because their financing disappeared overnight. The gig economy collapses as discretionary spending vanishes. Real estate follows next. As jobs disappear and credit tightens, housing prices crater. But unlike in 2008, there's no government program large enough to catch this fall. Foreclosures spike. Wealth stored in home equity evaporates. And here's the part most people don't see coming: social instability. In 1929, society was more cohesive, more local, more community oriented. Today, we're atomized, politically divided, and dependent on complex systems most people don't understand. When those systems fail, trust breaks down fast. Protests, riots, political extremism. Not because people are bad, but because they're terrified and angry. The psychological impact will be devastating. An entire generation, millennials and Gen Z, who've only known asset prices going up will watch everything collapse. Student debt they can't pay, jobs that disappear, homes they can't afford, retirement accounts gone. This isn't 1929, it's 1929, multiplied by global scale, digital speed, and the exhaustion of all rescue mechanisms. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this to prepare you. The difference between 1929 and today isn't just scale, it's awareness. In 1929, nobody saw it coming. The crash was a complete surprise. Today, we have the data. We can see the pattern. The question is whether we have the courage to act on it. Here's what you need to do right now. First, acknowledge the risk. Stop pretending the system is stable. It's not. Every indicator, debt levels, asset valuations, political dysfunction, exhausted central banks, says we're at the breaking point. Second, look at your own financial situation with brutal honesty. Are you over-leveraged? Is your entire net worth tied to assets that could collapse simultaneously? If the answer is yes, you're exposed. Third, build a financial lifeboat. Not after the crash, now. That means holding cash, diversifying into assets that perform during crises: gold, treasury bonds, defensive stocks, building an emergency fund that can cover 6 months of expenses, reducing debt wherever possible. Fourth, prepare psychologically. The crash will be traumatic. People around you will panic. You need to be mentally ready to stay calm and act rationally when everyone else is acting emotionally. The generation of 1929 had an excuse. They didn't know. We don't have that excuse. The warning signs are everywhere. The pattern is clear. The only question is whether you'll see it in time. Because when the crash comes, there won't be time to prepare. There will only be time to survive. The 2026 crash won't be worse than 1929 because the economics are different. It will be worse because everything that made 1929 a disaster, debt, speculation, overconfidence, exists today in amplified form with none of the solutions that eventually pulled us out. So here's my question for you. Are you ready, or are you counting on someone else to save you? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this opened your eyes to what's coming, subscribe to the Wealth Forum right now, because the tremors are already here. The earthquake is next. Don't wait for the ground to collapse beneath you. History gave us the playbook. The question is whether we're smart enough to read it.